Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Living Lab Basics. Our host, Manjunat Sekar, is going to give us a little introduction before we kickstart the session. So, Manjunat, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Marta, and good afternoon, and welcome to everyone on this webinar. From the Green Urban Mobility Innovation Living Lab, we are excited to bring to you the second webinar on this topic, which is on setting up living labs. We had a successful capacity building workshop, in-person training a couple of weeks back. We had two batches, and we got a fantastic response, and we are also happy to continue this with the hope that we can share enough knowledge that each of you can take to your respective context and environment and consider setting up living labs. As for support from GIZ, since you're already on this, you'll have our contact. So please do reach out to us for any support that we can extend to you. And again, I welcome you on behalf of GIZ and Bosch, the founding members of our Living Lab. I would also extend our thanks to our partners, Deloitte, CERT, and ENoLL, and the speakers for today, Martha and your colleagues. So I'll leave it to you to introduce them or to introduce yourselves and take it forward from here. So thank you again. Welcome everyone, and hope to have a good 1 hour with you.
Thank you very much, Manjunat. So, hi, everyone. My name is Marta de los Rios. I am from the European Network of Living Labs, and with my colleagues Mariem and Elina, we are going to present to you today the Living Lab basics, the principles, and challenges. So, first, we are going to do a short round of introductions of the three speakers of today. What is ENoLL? And then we will go into details of what we are going to cover in today's webinar. So my name is Marta de los Rios. I am the interim head of capacity building and research at ENoLL. I have been in ENoLL for the last 3 years, and I am mostly a facilitator and capacity building expert here at ENoLL, supporting teams and empowering Living Lab enthusiasts in discovering their potential and trying to include all of the Living Lab aspects in their life. My background, I am a process engineer and I have a master's in sustainable cities with over a decade of experience. So I'm going to give the floor to Mariem so she can introduce herself.
Hi everyone. So my name is Mariem Chakorun. I work as project manager for ENoLL for the last 2 years, and I'm working on projects related to urban planning, transition, and also institutional transformation with higher education institutions. So my background, I'm also engineer, electromechanical engineer, and I have a master in economic policies. And with ENoLL, I'm also a trainer on Living Labs, yes, and facilitator. Nice to meet you.
Great, thank you, Mariem. And now I'm going to give the floor to Elina so you can introduce yourself as well.
Yes. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and this webinar. So my name is Elina Makousiari, and I'm in ENoLL at the last 1 year, 1 year and a half as a junior project manager and trainer and capacity builder. So I work in projects focusing on certain capacity building, in projects also related to the energy transition. And in my background, I have a master's in urban environmental management. My regional bachelor background is in urban planning and development. So, Marta, back to you for to kickstart the training.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who are we, who is ENoLL. I see in the list of participants that we have already some colleagues who know us, but still, I'm going to do a short introduction for the ones who are hearing of us for the first time. So, ENoLL, the European Network of Living Labs, is the international nonprofit association of certified living labs. It was founded in 2006 under the auspices of the Finnish European presidency. We have historically labeled meaning putting a seal of approval of over 500 living labs, and currently we have around 170 certified active members. 89% of those are in Europe, but we do have members all over the globe. We are currently active in over 20 projects, and our main goal is to promote the Living Lab concept, support EU policies, enhance Living Labs and their sustainability, and also to support the replication of knowledge and the exchange of knowledge in Living Labs and all the core values and topics that we target. So what do we do in ENoLL? We are an ambassador for European values of co-creation and open innovation. We want to provide a space for our members to exchange among them, and especially we want to support the replication of knowledge through our capacity building and learning programs. We additionally have the whole process of certification and labeling of living labs. And we also have some knowledge exchange opportunities in different working groups. You can find all of this information on our website as well. So here is a little bit about what we are doing this year. We are working on changing the paradigm. You will hear more about Axelab soon. We have a lot of events happening this year. We have our flagship event in Timișoara, Romania. We are also going to be participating at the United Nations Summit this year. And finally, we are working towards having living labs being recognized EU-wide. So currently, we have a series of working groups and collaboration opportunities with the European Union and the European Commission, bringing living labs to the EU agenda, and it is already being mentioned in many different partnerships and missions that are being the flagship of the EU. So that was a short introduction of what ENoLL is. Now let's get our hands into this webinar. So the program for this lesson, we are going to be covering the topics that you see on the screen. So first, we are going to learn about what are and what are not the living labs, what are the main building blocks of living labs, why and when to use them, a 3-layer model, which is basic to have a sustainable living lab, which are the different roles that are important within our living lab, how to choose and when to choose a host organization, and also a little bit about the living lab integrative process. We will have a Q&A at the end, but of course, feel free to add any questions that you may have in the chat. My colleagues and I will be checking the chat regularly. So it wouldn't be an ENoLL training if we don't ask you to participate. So I'm going to ask all of you to go into this Mentimeter. You can either read the QR code or you can join at menti.com and use the code that you see on top. And we want you to reply to this question before I give the floor to my colleagues. So what do you think a living lab is? So please join us on this QR and reply to this question. You can add as many replies as you want. My colleagues will also drop the link in the chat just in case it's easier for some of you. Community, co-creation space, collaborative space, experimental hub, joint mission, open innovation, community, yes, sustainable transport, innovation field, a testing ground. Is a community sustained around the center, which is very nice. Collaboration, group, co-creation space, cohesive society, co-creation space in the center. Very nice, very nice. Thank you, all of you who are participating here. We are going to keep this Menti open and we are going to have a couple other questions throughout the session. So please do not close it. And now, having this background of what you think a living lab is, I'm going to give the floor to my colleague Mariem, who is going to present to you what are and what are not the living labs. So, Mariem.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you very much. So yes, as you know, we always hear that living labs are open innovation ecosystems. So what are open innovation? So this approach entails opening up the innovation process to all relevant stakeholders. So by doing so, it facilitates, of course, the free circulation of knowledge and its transformation into sustainable products and services that are accessible to all. So as you can see in the slides, we can see the difference between closed innovation and open innovation. In closed innovation, the process relies only on internal resources and expertise, where the flow of ideas is restricted within the confines of the organization. However, the open innovation model recognizes that valuable ideas can come from anywhere, both inside and outside the organization, fostering, of course, a more dynamic and collaborative environment for innovation. And of course, this process and collaboration can lead to the development of innovative solutions that are not only effective, but also sustainable and widely accessible. So let's move on to a practical application of open innovation, which are the living labs. So they are defined as open innovation ecosystems situated in real life environments. It's really important when we talk about real life environments. And they are based on a systematic user co-creation approach that integrates research and innovation activities within communities. So what makes living labs particularly effective is that they place citizens at the center of the innovation process. So here we can see that the living labs really embody the principle of open innovation, providing, of course, a platform where diverse stakeholders, including citizen research organizations, companies, and government, and we will see more in details this quadruple helix model. All these stakeholders collaborate in this platform, experiment, and co-create solutions in real world contexts. So this is really important, the co-creation aspect of the Living Lab and the user-centric that ensures that innovations developed are not only technologically sound, but also socially relevant and widely accepted. So another key point is that these ecosystems, the living lab in real-life environments, use iterative feedback process throughout the life cycle approach of the innovation. Next slide. So yes, at the heart of any type of living lab, there are two key processes taking place. So we talk about open innovation, but also the user-driven innovation. Why open? Because it's about saving the knowledge and know-how that exists outside of your organization by engaging with others. Why user-driven? Because living labs actively and directly involve throughout the innovation development process end users, so be that citizens, clients, or that final person or group that innovation is made for. So here innovation is not just about technology, but it's about implementing new highly improved goods or services, processes, or even new organizational methods in business practices or workplace organization. And yeah, the living labs are also a modern tool for research. So they enable citizens to actively contribute to the research process. And this involvement ensures that the innovation development are closely aligned with the real needs and preferences of the community. So the living labs can serve science in two major ways, a real research infrastructures, but also technology research infrastructure. And this depends on the innovation stage of maturity. So in the early stage, they provide a space to conceive or experiment research. That's why we talk about real research infrastructure. And when the innovation progresses, they support the development and refinement of technology in real-world settings. Next slide, please. So yes, what is real-life environment? So it can be many options. And here we can see the hospital room and or a city, an area which called urban living labs. And when we have a look at the first option, which is the hospital room, so in this setting, we would have a patient, a doctor or a nurse, a psychologist, a family member, and possibly an ethic manager. So it's very important to ensure that all these people are at the center of the co-creation process. So if we are designing a service or a product with these living labs, we should not only ask the doctor, but we should also involve the patient or the family member who is spending time there and will be affected by the service that we are designing. For the urban living labs, this is quite similar. So we have the public administration. This is really crucial. We have the urban planner. They have knowledge and they know the dynamics of the city. We have the infrastructure and technology. And we have people who are working on research and they are serving the latest research. And they are working closely with the urban planners and with the administration. But we have also all these people that are working in the city or area and interacting on a daily basis with the city. And more broadly, we have citizens. So citizen is a very broad notion, and they are also interacting with the city and they will be affected by the service design that we are designing with this living lab. So we should make sure that all these actors are involved in the process. So here about the systematic user co-creation approach. So this process highlights that we need this iterative involvement of users at every phase. This means that Living Labs operates on the principle that users, so the people who will benefit from the innovations, should be actively involved in the co-creation process. And this systematic co-creation approach can be broken down into several key phases. And it's very important to maintain the iterative nature throughout these phases. So we ensure that we refine continuously and improve the services that we are designing. So when it comes to the Living Lab integrative, the slide before, please. Yes, thank you. So when it comes to this Living Lab integrative process, so the design thinking, it integrates and brings together the various elements of the Living Lab framework with the design thinking problems and solution phases into structured set of stages. And here also we make sure that we keep this iterative approach in the process. Next slide, please. So, and the living labs are also defined as trustful regional ecosystems. So they create this trustful environment that all stakeholders perceive as safe and neutral, where they can contribute and understand the value and of the whole ecosystem. And they are also regional innovation hubs. Why? Because they provide a space where local challenges can be addressed through innovative solutions that are tailored to the community. They foster also a culture of collaboration and co-creation, ensuring that the innovations that we are developing are not only cutting edge, but also highly relevant to the region they serve. And here we come to why living labs, for many reasons that we mentioned already, and that they are providing this real life environment for testing and validation and innovation. As I just said, they address complex societal challenges and they involve in the process end users in the innovation. This quadruple helix model, and they offer a faster innovation cycle, and they provide also valuable insights into the adoption and sustainability of innovation in the long run. And of course, they bridge the gap between the research and the market. And finally, they transform clients into developers while supporting the creation of products and services that are more suitable for the market and aligned with the needs. So yes, we talk about the quadruple helix many times when it comes to engaging with the stakeholders. So here we have the academia, so universities, our research institutions, the ones who offer scientific knowledge and technical expertise. We have the government also, the public institutions that can provide in the innovation process, regulatory support, funding, policy frameworks, or insights representing the public service. And we have the industry as well, the startups, the businesses who bring resources, expertise, and market insights to develop and scale innovation. And of course, this really important to involve civil society, and citizen and community organization to ensure that innovation meets real community needs through active participation and feedback. So often we confuse living labs with with other labs or other definition. We have the test bed, which is a smaller scale of a living lab. They set and enable transparent and replicable testing for scientific theories. And here, they are not in a real life environments. They can be in the research center of a company or university, but they are not really in real life setting. And the users are often represented by researchers. And the living labs also can be confused with the Fab Lab, with the fabrication laboratory, which is a small scale workshop offering digital fabrication, or a home lab, which focus on testing and adapting new technologies. Sorry. Based on their fit with sorry. So here we can see an example of, let's say, a lab, and we can see together what is missing to become a living lab. So we have as an example this TNO urban mobility working in The Hague in the Netherlands. And the objective is of this of TNO is to advance and validate technologies and strategies that can improve urban air quality through better management of transportation systems. So as I said, they are located in research facility within TNO in Netherlands. And the process involves first the testing phase. So we have these vehicles and technology that are assessed under various scenarios to measure their impact on air quality. And then we analyze through the analysis phase and review the collected data to determine the technology effectiveness. And finally, we have the iteration phase that focuses on refining and improving these technologies based on test results. So here, the objective where they are located in the research facility center within TNO. And here we can see the process that involves the testing, the analysis, and the iteration. So my colleague will be sharing the link. And my question is, from the example we just presented, is anything missing? So this lab can be considered as a living lab. So you have you can scan the QR code, or you have the link in the chat. I cannot see the results. Government discussions, non-member participation, citizen inputs, involvement of citizens. Great. Long-term engagements, closed environments. Yeah, I think we have many correct answers. So as I highlighted, is the it's more a test bed because the users in the process are represented by researchers, and they are the lab is located within the TNO, so it's not in a real life environment. So mainly what is missing is that the co-creation process. So as you replied, we don't have inputs from the government, we don't have input from citizens, and we are missing also the real life environment. So these are the two key aspects that are missing. So this lab can be considered as a living lab. So thank you very much. I hope it was clear for everyone. And now I'm happy to pass the floor to Elina to present the Living Lab main building blocks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mariem. Yes, we will start with the main building blocks of Living Lab. So here what is important to highlight is that even we have a wide range of Living Labs out there that range depending on the scope they have or the context they operate in, they do all share some common characteristics, what we call as main building blocks. So in the next slide, you can see these six main building blocks, as we call them. So starting from the orchestration, already mentioned a bit in the definition, as Mariem explained before. So the Living Lab operates as an orchestrator within the ecosystem that connects and partners up the relevant stakeholders. And with the relevant stakeholders, we do mean this multi-stakeholder participation that we have within the Living Labs that allow us to have a more holistic approach and view on the society. So we have stakeholders being involved, representing the different parts of the society, meaning the different parts of the quarter helix model that Mariem mentioned before. So people from the government, the academia, the research, private sector, and of course, the citizens. So we do have these multi-stakeholder participation. So we have stakeholders that come and co-create together. So the Living Lab values that we have them co-created together with our stakeholders, not only for them, but with them. Because in this way, what we do gets at the end a higher adoption rate for the people that actually get to use them. So we have these people co-create together and we have them in real life settings, right? Living Labs operate in real life settings with the end user. So we infuse these innovations that we're working in the real life environments instead of having them on test sites that are more controlled, of course, and more sterile, let's say. So we have them in real life settings, and we actively involve them into the Living Lab activities. So we make sure that we got their feedback and we implement it throughout the whole life cycle of the innovation. And to do these Living Lab activities, we do use this multi-method approach, meaning that each activity should be designed and implementing, having in mind the expected outcomes with what we want to achieve, but also the specific stakeholders we need to bring in. So we have this pool of methods and tools that we can use, and then we cherry pick from them depending on each case of the activity. Moving to the Living Labs pitfalls and challenges. Of course, Living Labs are complex, is a complex world, and similar to the real world, it does encounter pitfalls and challenges along the way. So especially when setting up and establishing a Living Lab. So here you can see 4 different, let's say, umbrellas, categories of different types of challenges we can encounter, ranging from the theoretical and methodological challenges that are mostly for Living Labs working in academia and research. So here we have, there are a lot of practical studies out there, a lot of definitions of Living Labs, but there is a lack on a more, let's say, holistic and complete scientific perspective upon Living Labs. So we do have lack of comparative and cross-cultural studies or quantitative studies, because so far we have mostly qualitative ones. Challenges related with the scalability of the results. So how we do make sure that we can scale up our results and we maximize the impact that we have for the society, but also the development of a standardized Living Lab model, because across the world, Living Labs tend to have and use their own Living Lab models based on their own specificities. So we need this more, let's say, overarching harmonized Living Lab model, so all the Living Labs can be based upon. Then we do have governance and process related challenges. So multi-business collaboration within the Living Labs ecosystems is quite prominent, but also along with that, there is the issue of openness, because many times the Living Labs are not that open as they claim to be. Also, visibility and dissemination of the Living Lab activities and the results. So how we make sure that we make our results visible to the right target audiences, and of course we disseminate what we do. Financial issues, of course, because many things come down to money at the end. So how we ensure and what are our financial resources? Do we have any revenue streams? All things related to financial, and also technical and infrastructure challenges that we may encounter. Moving now to the next umbrella, let's say, of challenges, which are related with the motivations, the needs, and the expectations of the actors. This is, I would say, the most prominent category of challenges, because it has to do with the users and the actors. So user agreement, very vital for the Living Lab context, but also can be very challenging. Building trust and commitment with stakeholders can be also challenging. We need to ensure that we have continuous and active participation from all of them, not only the end users. Then, of course, keep them motivated, happy, and engaged throughout any kind of format we use within the activities that we do. So especially under the COVID era and the online environments, this is also an extra step of difficulty, let's say, that we need to encounter when talking about motivation of actors. And lastly, the ethical challenges. So, of course, ethics in innovation is quite a serious component that we need to take into consideration, and especially when talking about open innovation. So we need to ensure that we have informed consent or volunteerness when we do participatory research with our stakeholders and actors. And of course, even though it's open innovation, we need to ensure and safeguard their privacy, the privacy of their data. And also very, very crucial, the IPR, so the intellectual property rights that we can use and safeguard the activities that we do and the results that we have. So who owns our results? Who can use what we do, in what ways and how? So moving to the 3 Living Lab layered models, as Marta mentioned, it's related with the sustainability of the Living Labs. So this is, again, quite a complex concept. And it's what we use now to promote the Living Labs can be seen through 3 different lenses or levels, let's say. So we do have the macro, the meso, and the micro level. And the macro level, it's related with the Living Lab overall as an organization. So here we have the structure, the strategy, the organization of the of the Living Lab. And for here, responsible is the Living Lab manager. We'll get into the rules for the Living Lab in a minute, but let's think about it as a CEO of the Living Lab. Then we have the meso level. So here we have all the Living Lab projects and methodologies. So within a Living Lab, we can have, for example, 1, 3, 5 projects that are being running, and these are the ones that keep the Living Lab sustained. And then, of course, we have the micro level, where we have all the Living Lab activities and day-to-day activities that we do in order to feed also the other two levels. And moving to the roles within a Living Lab, as I mentioned before starting to explain the roles that each Living Lab team should actually have, it's very important to highlight here that these roles, every one of them has their own meaning and own importance. So they really need to be covered within a Living Lab team. It is not, especially in the beginning, when you start setting up a Living Lab, you can also start with 1 or 2 people, especially when funding is quite limited. So the roles can be covered from one person. So multiple roles in one person in the beginning is totally normal. So starting with the Living Lab manager, as I mentioned before, it's kind of the CEO, let's say, of the Living Lab. Is the most apparent internal role. It's the one that initiated, keeps the Living Lab strategy and the structure, manages the everyday activities, and ensures, of course, that the Living Lab overall and in the long term is maintained in an effective and sustainable way. A project manager, which is responsible for the managing of a particular Living Lab project, so the meso level, as I mentioned before. And here, again, depending on the scale and the timing that you are setting up and operating your Living Lab, you can have one project manager working on more than one project, or having more than one project managers. We also have the pilot manager, so the ones that set up, runs, and scale up the technology while doing the testing, so oversees kind of the implementation, the testing of the innovations. We also have the communicator, which is actually a very vital and prominent role within the Living Lab, which because it's responsible for creating and implementing the communication strategy. And when in Living Labs, we are in close contact and collaboration, co-creation with stakeholders, so with people, we really need to have a very well-established communication strategy. So how we communicate, how often we communicate, what communication channels we need to use in different, of course, subgroups, let's say, within the stakeholders that we have. Not every tool or every means work with everyone. And of course, internally, the communication is also really important. So you really have to have an established internal communication strategy, so you make sure the team is all well on board and knows what are the next steps to follow. Then we have the panel manager, which is, I would say, the most important role after the Living Lab manager. That is the person that is responsible for recruiting and interacting with this big cohort of stakeholders that you have in your Living Lab activities. This is the person that actually outlines the profiles and personas that you need and stakeholders that you need to bring on board. And also, lastly, we have the human interaction specialist, which is the person that performs actually and analyzes the results from all the different human interaction methods, and also called a researcher. And lastly, is responsible for testing solutions before actually getting them implemented in real life settings. And before giving back to the floor to Marta for the last bit of the presentation, we have also one more question for you in the same Mentimeter, so you can still use the same link. So do we think living labbing is a side job, meaning that the whole process of setting up and establishing a living lab, or of course late afterwards operating it, is a side job, something you could do a few hours per week in parallel with your main job? Okay, one no, one maybe so far. Okay. More people coming into a no, that it cannot be a side job, to maybe still 0 guesses. Great. Yes, we have most of the answers are in the no, and this is a very good indication because what we wanted to highlight with this checkup, let's say, question is that from across the roles that I explained before, and again, this is something that they can be covered from one person, more than one roles. It is very important to remember that even though you can start with one or two people, these people should be there, highly committed in what you're doing since day zero, because this is actually a full time job and requires a lot of effort from the beginning through its end, of course, to be able to have it succeed and sustained throughout the time. Thank you very much. I think I will give the floor back to Marta to do the last part. Thank you.
Thank you, Elina, for your presentation, and thank you, Mariem, also for your previous presentation. So now we are going to discuss a little bit, when do I need to select a host organization, or should I create a standalone organization? So this is a strategic decision that you need to make when you are considering a living lab. Consider that having a standalone organization requires that you are able to fulfill the 6 criteria that Elina mentioned, especially the orchestration part. If you decide to create a standalone organization, you should be able to connect with different stakeholders from the whole quadruple helix. So to have the access and the way of accessing different stakeholders. When we say, and when we mention host organization, this usually refers to who is the one providing the infrastructure and the access to different types of stakeholders. We are going to talk a little bit about what is the role and the importance of a host organization in a bit. So in this case, think of this as a strategic decision. When we say standalone organization, we are talking that you are going to be creating the Living Lab as an association, nonprofit, for profit, whatever type of figure that you decide. And that is going to be officially constituted and working independently. Usually, what we see that has been happening and what we have seen in our history in ENoLL is that most living labs start with a host organization, meaning they are inside of another institution that is providing an umbrella for them to work as a living lab. Later on, they usually become a spin-off of this host organization. So while they will continue having a really good relationship with the host organization, they will eventually or usually become a standalone organization. So let's talk a little bit about what is the role of this host organization and what is the importance of selecting the right one for the living lab that you want to create. So the role of the host organization is the central entity that is going to be coordinating and orchestrating the different activities. So as Elina mentioned and as Mariem mentioned, orchestration of stakeholders is the key role of a living lab. So in this case, the host organization is the one that is going to provide the infrastructure that is going to allow you to do so. Also, the host organization is the one that is going to provide the infrastructure, the resources, and the leadership. It could be that it is providing directly all of these things, or it is working as a funnel to bring some of these infrastructure resources and leadership from other organizations. Additionally, this host organization is the one that is going to make sure that the Living Lab has some level of accountability and that is efficient in its operations and attaining all the objectives and results that is expected. And finally, in the role of orchestrator, it is also the neutral party that is fostering the collaboration among all of the different stakeholders. As a living lab, you should not be biased when you are working on different types of solutions. So the role of the host organization and the living lab itself is to be that person in the center of the orchestration of the living lab, all these different stakeholders, creating all of these open conversations, acting as the neutral party. Why is it important to select the right host organization? It is crucial for the success and sustainability of the Living Lab. It is important that it's capable of fostering collaboration and support innovation, as well as coordinating all the different activities that the Living Lab is doing. Also, is the one that is going to be providing infrastructure, resources, and leadership, ensuring the sustainability of the Living Lab. And Also, it is important to understand that the Living Lab should also be contributing to the mission and vision of the host organization and vice versa. So it shouldn't go in different directions. It should be working towards the same goal. So finally, these are the last couple of slides. We are going to talk about the Living Lab integrative process. Mariem already mentioned this briefly before. We are going to go into this process a little bit more in detail. This is a framework that has been created some years ago and that we use in ENoLL to explain a little bit how is the process of moving from the identification of a problem or a challenge to the moment that a solution is scaled up within a Living Lab framework. So within the Living Lab integrative process, we have three different spaces. We have the problem space, we have the solution space, and we have the deployment space. Important and crucial to understand here, we are not talking about a linear process, we are talking about an iterative process. So this means that every single step is feeding information to the next and to the previous step. So it is okay to come back and forth within the process as many times as needed so you can identify the most suitable solution for the challenge that you have identified. So within the problem space, we recommend that you try and spend as much time as possible here. This is where you're going to be empathizing and defining, empathizing with all your stakeholders, with your context, understanding what is happening, and defining what you're going to be addressing. What is the main challenge? What are the barriers? And how are you going to start tackling them without thinking of solutions? Then you move into the solution space where you do the whole process of ideation, prototyping, and testing, very much inspired in design thinking. And here is where you're going to start thinking about different solutions that you can implement to solve the challenge that was previously identified. Again, iterative process. Finally, when you have identified the most suitable solution with all of your different stakeholders and co-created this solution, you're going to move into the deployment space where you are going to implement it, demonstrate it in real life systems, and then finally, you're going to scale it up and exploit the solution. These could be creating a spin-off. This could be replicating in a different space in the city. This could mean many different things. Very important here as well is that you should have a constant process of monitoring this whole process and this whole all the different stages, so you know if you're actually achieving the goals that you have set yourself as the Living Lab. So again, this is a framework that you can use for your own Living Labs and to create the process of identifying solutions and identifying challenges, and it can be used at any stage of your innovation process. So this was it for our presentation on the Living Lab basics. You have still, as part of this webinar series, a few more that are going to be presented by our colleagues from CERT that are going to be more focusing on mobility Living Labs itself. So that will provide you a little bit more clarity on how to implement it in those specific cases. But for now, this is our presentation. I would like to know if you have any questions. So please, you can drop them in the chat. I see a question regarding the presentation. So while the presentation is not going to be available, the recording of this session is going to be available. So you will hear from our colleagues where can you find the link afterwards in a follow-up email. So are there any questions from any of the participants in this webinar? Feel free to drop them in the chat. You can also raise your hand. We can open your mic so you can ask the question. In the meantime, while you come up with some questions, we do have a final question for all of you that we would like to hear. So Do you feel more inspired after this webinar to use the Living Lab methodology to help you solve complex issues within your context? We would like to hear from you here. And also, again, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. Definitely. Great. Great. 3, definitely. Happy to know that. Okay,
And of
so
course, every question, I just want to highlight that every
yeah,
answer is, of course, legit. So it's okay to be hesitant or not yet ready to use the methodology. It's a lot of things to digest, and of course, quite a complex methodology. So it's still okay. So we're here also for the part of the questions in case we can still discuss something.
yes. Well, we don't see any questions. Very happy to see that some of you are really seeing the potential of Living Labs to support you in your complex problems. So feel free to contact us if you have any questions. We are here to help you. We are here to support you in your Living Lab journey. And as I don't see any questions or any hands raised, I think we can close this webinar a few minutes early. Thank you very much for spending this almost hour with all of us. And we hope to see you again in the next webinars in this series. Thank you so much, everyone. And you have our contacts there in case you have any questions. You have also our website to research a little bit more about what we do. And again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.